Get in the know. Non-stop Vikings talk. It's Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com. Purple Daily, presented by Surly Brewing Company.
To be down 27-10 on the road, just like you were against Philadelphia, and find a way to come back and win that football game tells me that this team is for real. They're winning the close games this year in comparison to what they did last. Like, that's the difference with Minnesota this year. They didn't win any of these close games last year.
They won 7 straight by 1 score.
And they didn't win any of them last year. Yeah. I think they were like 3-9 last year on single-score games. And this year, obviously, they 7 straight.
Yeah.
So that's you're watching this team kind of build resolve throughout the year.
Uh-oh, little national hype, Judd. National hype.
Unbelievable.
Get the flag.
Unbelievable.
I need more enthusiasm.
Yeah, about to say, you don't really sound too enthused. You sound annoyed.
Did you already use all your enthusiasm on Sunday and Monday? Are your labrums frayed?
I got to dial it back down. a little bit. It's Tuesday. I got to re-energize. You see, this is the problem, you guys. Don't get ahead of yourselves. Buffalo now is in the rearview mirror. You got to gear up for Dallas.
I thought we got until Wednesday, didn't we? Isn't Wednesday the day that we refresh
24
the preparation?
Hours, 24 hours yesterday. Great excitement. Right now, resetting. Tomorrow, we begin full preparations for the Cowboys. But I'm going to tell you right now, don't buy into the hype. It might be nice to hear. Dial it back. Calm down. And now you got another challenge on Sunday. You got 3 tough games here. KOC and I aren't. We're not going to overlook teams.
I love it. You were actually providing some good motivation for fans via Twitter last night too, which we can get into on the show today. Later on, Judd will guess the PFF grades from the Bills-Vikings game, and we will rank NFL teams and let you know where we think the Vikings are. But this show, Purple Daily, Daily Vikings Entertainment, where we just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die, is presented by our friends at TCL, one of the world's best-selling consumer electronics brands. They have a new lineup of award-winning TVs delivering the most entertainment with stunning resolution at an affordable cost. Enjoy more of the things you love with TCL. And so many people showing us their cans via pictures on social media of those glorious Before I Die tall boys as the Vikings inch closer to paying off that slogan, right? It's not even a slogan. It's a lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle that is important. And at 8-1, every win, again, this is why you take it week by week, because every win gets us closer to the potential that before we die, we will see a Vikings championship. And that, of course, is why Surly made an outstanding beer called exactly that, Before I Die, in some purple colors. Enjoy that. Enjoy a Furious. Enjoy a Logic Bomb. Celebrate Vikings wins the proper way. That's with our friends at Surly Brewing, providing the beverage of choice.
A freaking men. So a thing happened in the NFL last night. Diet Brett Favre went on the road. Taylor Heineke, or Taylor Chains, if you watch the post-game plane celebration.
Bush Latte guy. Just pounding some domestic beers.
Slamming skunky beer. And we should get him some Surly, actually, if he really wants to celebrate.
Yeah.
But the Commanders, and you know what's funny? Just to back up, I feel like this show largely braced fans before that Commanders game when the Vikings went on the road and said, like, everyone's just chalking this up to a disaster. It is a disaster franchise, but it's a competitive, decent football team. They're now 5 wins on the season. And so that game when the Vikings went into Washington was never supposed to be a blowout, get-right game. It was always going to be kind of a tough one where you might trail in the second half, great pass rush, and they took all those things into Philadelphia and handed the Eagles their first loss of the season. So technically the Eagles are still the number 1 seed because they hold the head-to-head tiebreaker over the Vikings. But last night, the Vikings inched a little closer to the number 1 overall seed. So let's start with this question here. Now that the Vikings are tied with the Eagles for the best record in the NFL, and you got the national hype train is starting to leave the station a little bit here. And even Kevin O'Connell in the post game, the Vikings posted like a 2.5-minute sort of locker room speech and game ball celebration. Yep. And the first thing he said was, "Boys, we have stuck our flag in the ground," or however he phrased it, as being today one of the best teams in the NFL. So how would you characterize their status in the NFL? And we'll get to the actual rankings later, but like are they now officially Super Bowl contenders for you?
I think they are Super Bowl contenders to make the game because the conference, clearly the Vikings, and it's fortune too, and they played. I don't want to say they play great, but they play hard, and they do a great job in the most important quarter, which they previously didn't do, which is the fourth quarter. The Vikings are
the second quarter.
The Vikings are a definite contender for the Super Bowl from the conference. Now, that being said, I think that there is probably a handful or fewer of teams that are going to be pesky as hell. Like this is going to be, it's not going to win style points, but I see Philadelphia declining right now, but they can pop back up. I think San Francisco, that defense is coming on, and they're going to be tough. The Vikings, though, are right in the middle of that group. So I am not overly haughty. I am not like, well, the Packers suck now and the Vikings are going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I think that would be a mistake. What I am is quietly confident as we watch this team play week by week that it is learning or has learned by now how to win the games that are the most important, which is, this whole notion of, oh, you should blow teams out. That's not real life. Like, this is not the 98 Vikings, and it certainly is not the greatest show on turf Rams, and it's not the high-flying, 2007 Brady to Moss Patriots. No, it's just not those teams, which is fine. It's not even the Chiefs. But the reality is this team is doing an incredibly impressive job of winning games that are tough games, and that lends you to be quietly confident. But don't ever think that the Vikings have pulled away from the rest of the conference. They're not going to. There are going to be a handful of teams or fewer than that are going to be incredibly competitive, and it's going to make this fun. So enjoy the ride.
To your point about the lack of blowouts. Again, it would be nice. There's another sort of level here of offense, I think, that they can tap into, and it would be nice to see a couple decisive victories before the season's over, just to, all right, they can create some separation. But last year's Rams are kind of a great example. If you look at the last month and a half of their regular season schedule, and then you look at the last 3 playoff games they played on their way to winning a Super Bowl, they go early December. Now, they did have some blowouts, so don't get me wrong. But, okay, at Arizona, they win by a touchdown, and then they have a grinded-out win over the Seahawks. And then at Vikings, they win. We remember that game. The Vikings, I think they were up by 2 scores at one point, but the Vikings fought back in the second half of that game, and they win by 1 score. Mm-hmm. At Baltimore, 20-19, a loss in the final game of the season in overtime to San Francisco. They did blow out the Cardinals in the first round, but then their 3 playoff games after that were grind-out games against the Buccaneers, 3-point win, the Niners, 3-point win, and then the Bengals, 3-point win. The 3 decisive games to win the Super Bowl were grinded out, 23 points to win it, 30 points, 3-point victories.
Yep. And
so, to your point, they are going to lose games between now and the end of the regular season. Almost certainly. Unless anyone out there, and I'm sure there's some people, you want to raise your hand and say, this is a 16-1 football team, and they're just going to smooth sail all the way to a Super Bowl championship. The win over Buffalo does not mean that they're going to win out or that they're going to now just keep ascending. They're probably going to trip a couple times. They might trip against Dallas. Dallas is going to be pissed off about a loss against Green Bay, right? So to me, I think there's some fans that are they just have Ode to Joy just blasting in their head this is, whoa, here we go.
I'm legally required to get the flag whenever you do that. Don't forget.
So to be clear, I love how you can hear the wind of Judd's flag through his
I
microphone.
blow it right by the microphone. Yeah, it's going. Whoo.
The
That's
win over
strength.
Buffalo did not guarantee just total ascension from now until February.
Right.
The win over Buffalo, however, did guarantee that you know how to win games like that against one of the 3 best teams in the NFL in a road environment where you're down by 17 points. It was more about the validation and the reference point of knowing how to win a game like that than it was about now the expectation is to run the table and go 16-1 and blow everybody out. Let's go.
Well, and from what O'Connell said post-game too, the other thing that's so important is we can say, well, I mean, the Vikings were 7-1 and they're a good team. And if they had lost, it's still fine. But O'Connell's words carry weight. And that's this. Everyone in that locker room after that win believed more than they did at the start of that game. There's no question about it. You go into Buffalo and you win and you come back from 17 down. And basically you are the 180 of what you were a year ago. If they had lost that game and it was a close game, I'm not saying that they wouldn't have said, man, that was a hell of a game and we played well. But O'Connell would have had then to convince them, right? Well, we lost, but I mean, we came back and we rallied and it's impressive, boys. But there's nothing like a W to be like, oh, okay. So I think there's a difference between, in sports, you guys, I think there's a difference between arrogance and adding confidence. Arrogance can be a bad thing because then you get haughty and then a team beats you and you're like, what happened? But the confidence that O'Connell was talking about, that now the flag is in the ground, that you can go to a Super Bowl contender. I mean, the Vikings have played a lot of teams up until Sunday, and the only one that they had beat with a winning record was the Dolphins. So now you've got, to use your word, Phil, you've got a reference point. You've got now a point of, we went into Buffalo, weather was cold, really good team, really good QB, who, by the way, played, also incredibly important, and we won. I'm not saying that's going to make the Vikings arrogant. I am saying it's going to embolden them to believe in themselves more, and that is important.
Yeah. Without giving away rankings, Dex, how do you contextualize the Vikings' Super Bowl contention right now?
They're in the tier one. They're a tier one team right now. I have them right up there with the Chiefs and the Bills. I think of all the two teams in the AFC, the Eagles being the other team in the NFC, I think they're a tier one Super Bowl team right now. And I understand, I think some Vikings fans are probably feeling a lot of disrespect. I made it a mission yesterday to listen to a lot more probably national podcasts and national stuff than I typically do in my commute and in my consumption of stuff, because I wanted to hear what are they saying about the Vikings. Like, obviously, the Vikings-Bills game in itself was the most entertaining game of the football season on Sunday. So what are they saying about the Vikings? And I would say still more than half of the people I listened to, people who I kind of respect and really like to seek out their opinion, said, not for real, not legitimate. And a lot of that probably comes from them not watching a lot of the games, but they see, all right, they're one-score games. They're only plus 38 in a point differential, and they're 8-1. There's holes in their roster. Kirk Cousins has only been really good when it matters most, which is ironic because typically that's been the opposite of Kirk. But I think with the way that they are constructed right now and how they're winning games, I don't know how you cannot include them in the Super Bowl conversation, involving the teams that have the best chance to win a Super Bowl. The Vikings are part of that mix.
You know, I was doing the same thing, kind of just sampling. I'm curious about what the national perception is after that game. And I heard a lot of talk about Buffalo's flaws and why Buffalo lost the game and how Buffalo can't win overtime games and all this stuff, and a lot less talk about the Vikings. But at this point, just trying to speak on behalf of Vikings fans and maybe even the Vikings franchise, it doesn't matter what people or talking heads around the country think about the Vikings. This seeking of validation. We need Stephen A. Smith and Shannon Sharp and Colin Cowherd. Colin Cowherd, by the way, who people, including us, people laughed saying that they would double their win total from last year. Well, they've already pretty much equaled it, so maybe he was onto something. Or they did equal it, right? 8 wins. Didn't they win 8 last year?
Yep.
So they're kind of on pace for that.
Yep.
This franchise, it's not about getting the validation of talking heads and the media perception. It's about getting the validation from winning big games yourself, right? Go earn that respect by making a deep playoff run, by closing out the number 1 seed, by, winning a Super Bowl for the first time in 60-plus years. That's part of the reason why people around the country don't necessarily take the Vikings as seriously, because they are the franchise, they are the Charlie Brown, right, that always winds up on their ass trying to kick the football. So until they change that narrative by actually going out and getting back to a Super Bowl and winning something, substantive, they're going to be viewed as the team that just comes up short in big games. So it's on them to change the perception and the narrative. That's where I'm at with it.
And I get one thing here, because unless you watch this team every week, Kirk's season does not compute. His stats are actually going down. And so you look at that as, keep in mind, these people watch highlights and look at stats. Like, they can't watch every game. So they look at what Kirk's done and they're like, well, it's still the same Kirk. His stats are going down, but he's getting fortunate, right? He's getting lucky. Well, if you watch the games, you have a much different view of Cousins and what this team is doing. So I get where they're coming from because they're trying to comment on every team. The other thing, though, is from a fan standpoint, and what I tweeted last night is we need to stop worrying about the noise as fans as well. This is what O'Connell is doing very effectively internally, but I feel like we so often get eaten up in this town, sports-wise as sports fans, by the noise of what this person is saying and what that person is saying, and it turns us into the woe is us, which is somewhat at times feels like a self-fulfilling prophecy then, because then we're like, well, yeah, of course we lost. Everyone said we couldn't win and blah, blah, blah. Screw that. Tune out the noise, focus on the games. Focus on what this team is doing. Don't focus on the stats. Don't focus on Kirk's stats. I would urge the Cousins stands who are Vikings fans, and I know that there's some who are just Kirk fans, but who are Cousins fans, to also don't defend Kirk. Just allow this to play out. His stats are down. We made it very clear on the show. We don't give a damn. But the woe is us, shrugging our shoulders, Eeyore demeanor that we carry in this town is useless to the goal of, before I die personally, just turned 53, winning a Super Bowl. And I'm going to tell you right now, look at what O'Connell does in those post games. That's what everyone in this town needs to follow, which is believe in yourself, take it game by game, don't get haughty, and most of all, don't allow everything else that's being said from New York and Los Angeles to affect how you feel about your team.
Wow, sports dad, take a bow.
That's sports dad.
Came here for some Vikings banter and wound up getting some life lessons like an early '90s sitcom from Sports Dad. This is great. That was like the Bob Saget sit down right there.
Boy meets Sports
with
Dad.
Like we
right
needed
there.
like some soft piano music in the background.
Here you go. Well, let's wave the flag.
Oh, you want to? Okay.
wave
Yeah,
it.
sorry. Yeah, wave the flag.
Let's wave the flag. Let's wave the flag. Let's wave the flag. I'm so sick of being convinced that bad things are going to happen when you've got now a coach and GM who, first of all, have no idea and don't care about what's transpired. And second of all, this coach is a young, enthusiastic guy who's trying to, rightfully so, fly in the face of all the crap. And you've still got this, well, listen to what they said on ESPN about who cares.
Dude, I got in a fight on Twitter last night with some people. No. Shocking. I know. Right?
You did?
A bunch of people started tweeting me. I don't know if it was just like, I don't know if this was a discussion happening before. I kind of jumped on at the end of the Monday Night Football game, and people are saying now we need the Eagles to dust themselves off and bounce back because the Eagles play the Packers in 2 weeks or something, or in a week or two. Yeah, that we need the Eagles to now go and get themselves back on track so they can beat the Packers. And I was like, come again? I get that you're sort of trained as a Vikings fan to just always root against the Packers, even if world peace depends on a Packer victory. No, we must root against the Packers.
Right.
The Vikings are 4.5, 5 games clear of Green Bay at this point. If the division is in jeopardy, the Vikings have much bigger problems.
Yeah.
You want the Packers to be your friend in that Eagles game because, and this is kind of classic Minnesota sports defeatism, right? It's what you were saying. We're kind of looking back over our shoulder. Oh, God, the Packers offense kind of got it together there in the second half. And, yeah, maybe the Packers offense did get it together. Who cares? They have 6 losses already. Mm-hmm. The division, I'm not taking anything for granted here. I'm just saying, like, looking forward, you want the Eagles to lose games so the Vikings can get home field advantage, maybe even a bye to rest up through the NFC playoffs. But there's still this, like, well, but bad things could happen. Look ahead. The Eagles are the team that you are trying to chase down in 2022. Usually it's the Packers because they're almost always like a 13-win team. I found that dynamic interesting.
And there's also but it's the Packers, and we want to watch them suffer. At this point, who cares about them?
And they are suffering.
They are suffering, but also who cares? Like if we're going to have a conversation, which we are right now on this show, about this team potentially being a Super Bowl contender, okay? That's not about, did you see what the Packers did this year? They were terrible. This is a Super Bowl discussion. And Phil, you're right. I mean, if we're talking about if the Green Bay Packers can help you get a bye, there's only one bye now. If the Green Bay Packers can help you get that, go Packers. Like, that's the thing is, be confident. Don't be arrogant. Don't get your eye. We need to keep our eye on the prize if we're going to talk Super Bowl. And that's not like, I just want the Packers to have another loss and another loss. Because Phil, if this gets to be a race, the Vikings are falling apart.
Yeah.
So
this only becomes a race if the Vikings lose 4 games in a row or something.
Correct.
And in which case, okay, now there's a new thing to address here.
And then this discussion just ends.
Yeah.
Like if they go off the cliff, so if we're going to have in November a discussion about this team potentially being something that I sure didn't expect, a Super Bowl contender, you need to keep your eye on what's important here. And what the outside national people say is not. And like you just said, Green Bay, you want them to lose and lose. No, if they're playing the right team, i.e. in this case, the Eagles, you want Green Bay to win.
And in terms of blocking out the noise, I think we are noise because we do a podcast every day. So if you could block out all of the noise except us, that would be great. If you could just consume all of our noise on a daily basis, it would help us continue to grow. By the way, get the flag again here, Judd, because Purple Daily, thanks to Justin Jefferson's hand, Judd's flag waving, and this community that you guys have helped us build, is up to 9th on Apple's National Football Podcast chart.
Now you're getting enthusiasm.
9th?
Now you're getting enthusiasm.
Dude, this is kind of crazy. So this happened
Drop something now.
earlier in the year. What are you doing there?
He dropped
I
something.
dropped some notes.
Oh, okay.
My flag caused my notes to fly off my desk.
Those are going to be very important notes for later in the show when we rank NFL teams here shortly. But so the Apple Football Podcast rankings include that Jason and Travis Kelce podcast is number 1, New Heights. Pardon My Take is number 2, Barstool. Colin Cowherd is 3. Around the NFL from NFL is 4. And then there's a Fox Sports Joel Klatt, the college football podcast that everyone listens to.
Pretty good.
A couple college football podcasts here. Sirius XM's Tom Brady podcast with Larry Fitzgerald is 8th.
Let's go.
Purple Daily is 9th. Ahead of Bussin' with the Boys, Barstool. Unnecessary Roughness, Barstool. Footballin' with Ben Roethlisberger. I didn't know he had a podcast, but apparently
we're coming
and the
for
Athletic
TV.
Football Show.
So we're coming for TV.
We are 1 away from overtaking Tom Brady in the Apple Football Podcast rankings.
There we go.
Okay.
My notes are secure
Crazy
now.
is that?
I've got my notes secure. That's awesome.
That's pretty bonkers.
Thank
man.
you.
And I think it's,
you.
listen, it's in part because, we are charming, hilarious, and
Obviously.
charismatic and all of those things. But I think when Justin Jefferson catches a pass like that and the game is as bonkers as it was, this kind of happened when Jim Harbaugh almost became the Vikings coach and the Vikings were the center of the universe.
Yeah.
But, thank you guys for
Guys are
pumping
awesome.
the tires of Purple Daily. Let's pump the tires real quick of our friends at Livia for helping a bunch of Purple Daily listeners and viewers lose weight over the past year.
Let's do that. And right now, they have their best offer of the year. That's right. So it's getting to be cold. You're probably on the couch. Holidays are coming, and you're saying to yourself, I'll work out or I'll try to lose weight later. But here's the thing. Don't wait. Do it now. Feel great by spring. Heck, you know what? Drop 20, 25 pounds by the end of the football season. Perhaps the Vikings, let's just hypothesize here. Perhaps the Vikings are playing a game in February. And you are going to make the trip to Arizona for, I think I can say, the big game. And you're like, what am I going to wear? Imagine you've dropped enough weight to wear clothes that fit perfectly. You're feeling good. Again, best offer of the year, save 50% inside or outside the state, because they can certainly do things virtually. 855-GO-LIVIA, livia.com, livea.com. Start losing the weight today. The way to do that, Livia, livea.com.
I got 3 words for you guys. Tootsie Roll poops. Digestive health on full display for Maya Mackey because of her Nutrisource chicken and rice. We went through another bag of training treats as well. I mean, she's still training a little. She's pretty young, and we've had her for like 9 months, but it's just the treats. We also mixed in the last couple weeks the broth, the Nutrisource broth as well, Judd. So she's loving everything.
Yes, and Stella does too. In fact, there is a picture of my little doggy with her training rewards treats. I mean, she looks like a spokesman, and she could be, because this dog tries to go outside as much as possible. Is it because she has to go potty constantly? No, of course not. It's because she knows if she goes outside and comes back in, that she is going to get rewarded with something delicious from our friends at Nutrisource.
NutrisourcePetFoods.com, Minnesota-based company in Perham, but you can find them in all 50 states. NutrisourcePetFoods.com to find your retailer. And a quick shout out to our friends at Federated Mutual Insurance Company. Federated's been around for over 100 years, helping businesses maximize their level of success. It's like having a great offensive line protecting your business. Risk management tools and resources galore when you partner with Federated. You tap into that 100-plus years treasure trove of expertise. Federatedinsurance.com, where it's our business to protect yours. It's time now for the Pigskin Pecking Order. Where do the Vikings rank, gentlemen? This is where we go into our algorithm here. And by the way, I don't know, old Macadac for the second day is having some internet problems. So if you guys need to take the wheel, you go ahead and just take the wheel from old Macadac.
We'll do Carrie Underwood. I can do that. Jesus will take
the wheel.
So
yes. So we each rank our top 10 teams in the NFL, and we put together an aggregate sort of show ranking according to the Purple Daily CEO, CBO, clickbait officer, and CBDO, the Chief Beverage Distribution Officer. That would be Judd, obviously.
Thank you very much.
So let's rank some NFL teams here. Number 1, the Kansas City Chiefs.
How about them Chiefs?
They might be in for a loss or two at some point.
Yeah.
As well. That's not a perfect team.
Nope.
Okay, number 2 still the Philadelphia Eagles, but on shakier ground. We'll kind of revisit this at the end.
Oh yeah.
The Minnesota Vikings, we have moved up consensus from 4 to 3. Put a pin in that. We'll circle back to that.
Well, pin in that.
We've got the Bills down to 4 after what we saw on Sunday with a healthy enough Josh Allen anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Dolphins up to 5.
Yeah.
Ravens at 6. Giants at 7.
Interesting.
Which is funny because...
Who had them that high?
So I'll spill the beans here. I had them 9th. Declan had them 10th, if that gives you any indication of who the culprit is.
The Giants?
Who loves the
Giants. Yeah, I wouldn't drop them too much yet.
Dallas Cowboys 8.
Yep, lost to Green Bay.
San Francisco 49ers at 9. And then the Seattle Seahawks still hanging in there despite a loss at 10. So Chiefs, Eagles, Vikings, Bills, Dolphins. That's the top 5. Ravens, Giants, Cowboys, Niners, Seahawks. Where did we have the Vikings? Declan had them up to 2nd after an Eagles loss last night. So we all had Chiefs number 1. Declan had Chiefs 1, Vikings 2, Eagles 3. Judd and I had Chiefs 1, Eagles 2, Vikings 3. And then we all had the Bills either 4th or Judd had them 6th. But Declan, you had the Vikings 2nd. We had the Vikings 3rd. Judd, what do you think? What do you make of our rankings here?
I think it's very fair. I think it's starting to take some shape now, too. This is probably the most confident I've been about these top 10s all year, because it feels like now, as is traditionally the case when we approach late November, that you start to get a little bit better feel. But I mean, when you're looking at the NFC teams that I think are all very closely grouped, because I think they're closely grouped: Eagles, Vikings, Giants, Cowboys, Niners, and perhaps Seahawks. for me are all in that group. Like, there's no team that I would say, oh, that team is clear. Like the Vikings would kick the Giants' ass or something. I wouldn't say that. So I think it's very fair, and I think it's very interesting, and this is why it's going to be a dogfight, which will be great fun for whoever does come out of the NFC.
I will say that I was watching Stephen A. Smith do his top 5 list about 5 minutes ago. And outside of 4 and 5 being flipped, he has the same 5 teams that we have in our top 5 as well. He has the Chiefs 1, the Eagles 2, the Vikings 3, the Dolphins 4, and the Bills 5.
See, the Bills are so interesting because at their best, they can just smoke anyone. But then they also have a quarterback that is going to throw like 2 or 3 interceptable passes every game, and they don't have I think Josh Allen's their leading rusher as well this season, so they don't have a super reliable run game.
Correct.
But their defense is largely very good, although the Vikings scored 33 on them. So,
here's my question for you guys. When we get to the playoffs, and this probably depends on track and where they're playing too, but how much do you see the Dolphins as a playoff type team? Because, I mean, they rely on a high-flying, it's fun to watch, but in the playoffs, I feel like Tua and the Dolphins potentially could be slowed.
It all depends, man. If they're playing at home and it's 75, 80 degrees and you can get those wide receivers running around. Now, if they're playing in windy Buffalo and there's snow coming down or something, then maybe it's a little bit different. And then how much do you trust Tua in huge games on the road? If they can get home field advantage for some of these, though, that's a really good offense, and it's a sneaky good overall team.
I know he missed 3 games, but Tua's like number 1 or 2 in almost every major passing statistic right now. Like, he is really good. He is not. He's being propped up, and credit to McDaniels for getting him, Mike McDaniels for getting him propped up correctly. But like, Tua Tagovailoa is good. Like, I don't think there's a debate anymore. He's a very good quarterback.
You know, you guys might disagree with this, but on the Viking side, in terms of like the Eagles are a team to just because they lost and maybe they peaked already. I don't know. The Eagles are a problem. Don't get me wrong.
Yep.
But the other team on this list of 10 in the NFC that I think is maybe even a bigger problem in the playoffs is the San Francisco 49ers.
Yep.
Weapons. They're tough. They have a defense. We already kind of saw what happened when the Vikings went and played them a few years ago on the road. So, again, if you're looking at the rest of the schedule here, how important is it to play home games in the playoffs? Well, would you rather go back to San Francisco and do that whole thing again, or would you rather them come into 70,000 crazy Vikings fans inside US Bank Stadium? But I think the 49ers at the end of the day are going to be more of a problem than the Cowboys and the Giants, even though we have them below those teams in these 10. And don't rule out the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers have not made our 10 in quite some time. But we've seen some lifeless Tom Brady teams midseason, including the year they won the Super Bowl in 2020. So I would not just dismiss the Buccaneers as a future problem for the Vikings in the playoffs too.
And on the San Fran discussion too, the one thing is, and we've seen this before, and it doesn't always translate through the entire playoffs and certainly to the Super Bowl, but Jimmy Garoppolo finds ways to win, which is sort of what Kirk is now doing, right? Like, It's like, okay, Kirk's stats aren't great, but oh my God, they won. Credit Kirk. But I think that's the biggest thing, Phil, through the years in our conversation about Garoppolo has been that, right? Like, the stats aren't great, throws a couple of bad picks, and then San Fran wins. So they scare me. The other team that I think is sort of the wild card in this entire thing, and I don't know what to make of them, but they could be on the fringe of being a little bit frightening. Seahawks. Geno Smith's having this weirdly really good year. Now they lost to Tampa, but you know what? All teams suffer weird and bad defeats at some point. So I wouldn't dismiss that. But I'm going to be very curious because I assume that they're going to be in the playoffs, what Geno Smith and Seattle can do in that first game to see if they can set a tempo, because it'll be a close game is my guess, but I wouldn't be shocked if they won.
No other team has scored more points in the NFC than the Seattle Seahawks.
How about that? With Geno Smith, man.
I know.
But they've got two. They got Tyler Lockett. They've got DK Metcalf. They've got that rookie running back, that Kenneth Walker, and a young, fast defense. So that's how quick it can turn in the NFL. If you nail like 5 draft picks in 1 year or like 8 over 2 years, and they become starters, all of a sudden now you're young, fresh, and back on the rise.
which coaches on this list of NFC teams right here, which coaches do you respect the most too? So like, because I mean,
Mike McCarthy.
playoff coaching matters, right? No, exactly though. Mike McCarthy
honestly,
doesn't.
Brian Dable.
Yeah,
Brian Dable with the Giants. There's something about him and the effect he had in Buffalo.
I agree.
Pete Carroll a little bit, I would say, just like getting a team to believe. There's something about that Seahawks team that feels a little like it did in 2010, 11, 12, kind of leading up to when they won a Super Bowl.
Kyle Shanahan against O'Connell could be a heavyweight young geniuses matchup.
I love it, man. Yeah, I don't know what to make of Nick Sirianni yet, but he's got that team playing its ass off.
But I'm with you. Yes, I like that point.
I like McDaniels, what he's building, but I can see that dude being super overwhelmed in wild card weekend on the road.
Yep.
Like, I could see him being I don't know if they'll be on the road, but I can see him being completely overwhelmed and shipwrecking something.
Okay, I'll give you another one. No one's talking about this team, and I'm not saying they're in the 10, but the bottom of the NFC playoff picture is wide open. The Washington Commanders might, at some point, have something to say as a wild card team, as like a 8 or a 9 win wild card team. That they just went on the road and beat Philadelphia. Ron Rivera has a way of just getting a team to elevate above where it's supposed to be. So, again, these are all teams like I think the Vikings are at the top of this bunch, but it's kind of fun to look at. All right, who might you square off against in a couple months from now? So, and the Commanders are they're back to 500, right? Aren't they 5-5 after that win?
Yes,
I believe so.
Last night. So.
Everyone in that division is 500 or above. After that division was a complete joke for how long? Like 3 years, 2 years? And the NFC South is garbage.
Yes. So there you go. There's your pigskin pecking order for this week here. We got the Vikings as the third best team in the National Football League. Real quick, let's go around. What are some other outlets saying about the Vikings here this morning? These are some of the projection sites here. Like 538 is one of them. And they currently give the Vikings the third best odds to win the Super Bowl, 11% chance to win the Super Bowl. They give the Vikings a greater than 99% chance to win the division. Just so you guys are not freaking out over, oh my God, what if the Packers win some games? I'm not going to count my chickens before they hatch, but this division is largely on ice right now. But this is the key thing. The Vikings are tied with the Eagles now. Well, actually, the Eagles have a 41% chance to get the number 1 seed. Vikings at 40%. So it's basically neck and neck for the Eagles and the Vikings to be the number 1 seed. Chiefs 21% to win the Super Bowl. Bills 12%. Vikings and Eagles both at 11% to win the Super Bowl. That's the highest the odds have been in years. I think probably in 10 years.
I think for the first time after what transpired on Sunday that you have to give the Vikings at least a real chance of being in that game. And if you get to that game, you play the Chiefs, it's going to be hard, but weird stuff can take place, right? So I think what's changed now is, and again, like it or not, this is why the Bills the win is so important, because that now emboldens you to say, you know what, you can't dismiss them. Like, you can't just write them off. They lose that game. I think a lot of folks are like, all right, so we sort of saw, they gave it their best punch, cute, and fell short. But the fact that they won, I think, changes the narrative to a point of saying you have to take them seriously, if nothing else, to get out of the conference.
Yeah. Over on footballoutsiders.com, they're always a little conservative with some of this stuff. So, well, this is interesting. So the Eagles and Vikings are both 8-1. They've got the Eagles projected to finish with 14 wins, but they've got the Vikings projected to finish with 12 wins. So they've got the Vikings playing sort of 500 football the rest of the way. And that's what you'll see with like ESPN's FPI. The analytics don't love the Vikings because the Vikings give up a lot of yards on defense. They don't blow teams out. So they point differential wise and yard differential wise, they profile like more of a 500 9-win team. But they're finding ways in the margins to win all of these games. And so what Football Outsiders is saying is that's going to catch up to them a little bit. Not enough to like derail their season. They've already built enough wins up, but they see some regression in the second half of the schedule. They still have the Vikings at 3% to win the Super Bowl, the 9th most likely team to win the Super Bowl.
Tough question here, Phil. But what's your opinion of how advanced metrics apply to football as opposed to baseball or basketball? Because like when Josh Allen drops the snap in an end zone, that is such a like sort of arbitrary thing.
Well, it's lucky. It was lucky.
Right. No, but I'm saying
the Vikings should have lost the game.
That's my point. But like but I mean, when you're getting a season of good luck and fortune, how much does that change yes, they shouldn't have won, but they did, and you can't take that away from them.
Well, but that's what this is saying. It's saying, hey, we know that they got lucky and won another game, but if that process continues, if the process that happened in Buffalo continues, they aren't winning that game very often at all. So you don't have to apologize for the wins. And that's the other thing here too is, let's say they play 500 football the rest of the way. Well, 12-5 still maybe gets them a home playoff game. So, like they've already luck or not, they've already built up enough equity so far this season. Oh, anywho, before we get to Judd guesses the PFF grades, a shout out to our friends over at Prize Picks, the easy way to play daily fantasy. So Prize Picks is great for a million different reasons, but you can do like mixed sports entries, NFL, NBA, NHL. You can win up to 10 times on any entry, picking between 2 and 5 players and an over-under on a projection. Use the promo code NORTH, and Prize Picks will match your first up to $100. Promo code NORTH. Prize Picks will match up to $100. PrizePicks.com and the Prize Picks app. Are we still alive here?
You're trying. You're inching along. If you want, I can potentially do PFF grades with Judd here. I have top 5 offense and defense pulled up. Judd,
Let's go.
Let's do it. Let's do top 3. Top 3 offensive performers.
Okay. All right.
Top 3 defensive
top 3.
performers.
Yep. That's all we do.
All right.
That's all I gotta guess.
Judd. All right, Judd. So let's go with the top 3 offensive performers according to PFF on Sunday against the Bills.
All right. Justin Jefferson is obviously one of them.
That is correct.
I was ridiculed last week, and I guessed him. So I'm going to, despite his long touchdown run, I'm going to guess that Dalvin Cook is not among them this week. I was trying to think of like skill position against offensive linemen. I'm going to guess this because this guy had a solid game, and I think would have probably graded out pretty well. I think he was 4th last week against Washington. Phil said, I'm going to guess T.J. Hawkinson.
TJ Hawk was not among the top 5 players.
All right. After that, skill position wise, I'm at a loss, so I'm going to do the old standby, the old fallback that I did last week, which is I'm going to start guessing offensive linemen. Okay, so just quickly thinking out loud here. Christian Darrisaw didn't play the entire game because I think he might have made it, but he did have the hold against him. So I did see some film circulating around of some pretty nice blocks by a guy who was terrible against Washington. I'm going to guess Ezra Cleveland.
Yeah, Cleveland with a 90.2 PFF grade.
All right. Ed Ingram. Ed tripped Cousins twice. I think that's going to be held against him. Yes. When you trip your quarterback not once but twice. I didn't see much from Bradbury. He played fine, but I mean, I don't think that he would have been a top graded guy. So that leaves us with one guy, and he consistently, I think, does really well. Brian O'Neill.
Wow. Look at Judd. Those are the top 3 players. Jefferson, 91.1.
So
Ezra Cleveland, 90.2. Wow. Brian O'Neill, 78.6. Correct. T.J. Hawkinson was not among the top 5 offensive graded players for the Vikings. Right. Let's do top 3 defensive graded players. The top 3 defensive graded players for the Vikings against the Bills.
First one's easy. The veteran, long in the tooth, but long in experience, Justin Jefferson.
What?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Patrick Peterson. I was getting my. Sorry,
what?
Phil disappeared, and I lost my thought. I lost my thought. Yes, Patrick Peterson. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Pat P was 3rd. He was 3rd among the top 5 graded players on Sunday.
Next up, I am going to guess because this guy I know had a good game. Going back to Buffalo, he got a game ball. I'm going to guess Harrison Phillips.
The highest graded player on defense for the Vikings on Sunday
wow.
was indeed Harrison Phillips, an 87.0 grade. The fire hydrant, as he liked to call himself, the fire hydrant who can do all that dirty work.
Interesting.
Max hanging out back there.
And then my final third guess is going to be a guy who put up pretty good statistics in the game and I felt made some plays. Eric Kendricks.
Believe it or not, Eric Kendricks was the worst graded player on defense for the Vikings on Sunday, Judd.
Yeah, got a game ball. I would,
The worst.
If I'm Kevin O'Connell, I'm taking that game ball back after I saw those PFF grades. I'm like, Eric, I'm sorry, buddy. The PFF grades came out. Gonna need that game ball back.
So you get a touchdown. You recover a ball in the end zone. I know it's sort of lucky, but you get in there and recover that ball, and you get the worst grade from PFF.
What? Okay, yes, Judd.
What's going on,
Yeah.
Collinsworth?
That's luck.
No, that's luck. Yeah.
I know. I was kidding.
No, I don't think you're kidding.
You guys settle down. Everyone settle down. All right, so oh boy, this is the toughest one then. Obviously no other cornerback played great. Harrison Smith didn't have a pick again. Zadarius Smith got hurt a couple of times. All right, he had a sack. I'll guess him. Danielle Hunter.
There you go, Judd. Harrison Phillips, 87 grade as number 1. Danielle Hunter, number 2 at 84.1. Patrick Peterson, 82.4. So you did it. You didn't burn all of your guesses.
I'd like to help my friends at PFF start to factor in luck as a part of the grade. If you get a touchdown, you shoot up right to the top of the rankings.
They should have who are the luckiest players in the NFL this year. If we were going sample size, Duke Shelley with 3 snaps, 89.2 grade in this
We got to
game.
figure out. So if a Caleb Evans is going to be sidelined against the Cowboys because of his concussion, and Cam Dantzler can't play because he's on IR, does Andrew Booth start or does Duke Shelley get the start?
That's a great.
Booth-
it's a
Booth
huge
got
indictment on
picked
Booth
on.
if he doesn't
Well,
start, right?
Booth was getting, rightfully so, and it was smart, but they went right after Booth with Diggs. And the one thing the Vikings won't do, and I almost don't blame them, but they will not have Peterson play sides. So he's anchored. Both of the corners are going to be anchored, and in zone they have to be. So I wonder who gets the start if Evans can't come back from the concussion.
Yeah.
Duke Shelley.
They're fairly deep. They're fairly deep. They've got some guys who can play. If a Caleb Evans can't play, we know that Duke Shelley at least had one nice play in 3 snaps. So we'll see. So all right. Well, there's Purple Daily Vikings
He's back.
Entertainment. Judd Whitehack, Kirk Cousins, the worst graded player on offense too for the Vikings in that game.
Oh, was it? I thought it was Johnny Munt. I thought I saw Munt, but regardless, it was not a good performance for him.
Worst graded starter. Worst graded starter.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
And Johnny Munt was the worst graded player. So, but
Month
that's it.
season's
That's
over,
fine.
guys.
It might be.
Month season might be done, but you know what? He served his purpose. Good for him.
All right, we'll see you guys for a Write That Down Wednesday tomorrow. Please click subscribe and the like button on the Purple Daily YouTube channel. Thanks for hanging out with us.